undead spin, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, denying Holocaust deniers, You Can't Stop Us, Littlest Bailout Fund, Virtual Influencers, COVID Disinfo, Walmart Nazis, Conference Pause, Cancel Culture, Coronavirus Bubble, some stats on how people are behaving in their social circles under the new reality of the plague. But we started off with Best Story of the Week, and BL always has that honors. BL, what do you got?
Well, I have this one in Best because it shows that there may be a new model for publications that will be owned by the staff and who can vote out their editor. So I think this is extremely cool for that reason. 18 of the journalists who quit Deadspin last year in a protest have started a news site. And they call that Defector Media. And it's owned by the journalists. And they all lost their jobs like so many others. And so I think it's a hopeful sign that this is happening. And if you didn't know Deadspin, it was, even I liked it. It was an irreverent sports publication. And the new publication has no ads. It's supported by an $8 a month subscription with a discount for an annual subscription. And Tom Lay, who's a former feature editor at Deadspin, is the new editor-in-chief. And the staff is optimistic because the thinning of local sports sections, the dissolution of ESPN's magazine, and all the layoffs at Sports Illustrated may have created a vacuum for sports information. So the staff is going to be paid as money comes in, but importantly, they own their own intellectual property. That's not the case anywhere. And so that's a big deal, because if one of their stories becomes a Netflix or a Hollywood story, they get all the money. The dispute at Deadspin was about a story that was critical of the holding company and a couple of others that were not about sports. The new publication will be about sports and culture, so that if they want to write about something else, they can. One of the stories that that they wrote was about a pumpkin thief. And so GO Media, which also operates The Onion and Jezebel, such a troubled publication, The Root, and other websites, they told them, after they wrote a critical piece about the holding company, they said, you better stick to sports. And the staff felt that management had crossed the editorial line, and they all quit en masse. So most of the writers have followings of their own. And after they quit, they made a Twitter feed that's very popular called Undeadspin. And it highlights the articles that they each wrote in other outlets. And they also reprised their voice in pop-up blogs around the Super Bowl and again in April. So I think this is a bright future for journalism.
Yeah, the key to making that work is the fact that a lot of the writers had their own followings on social media.
But a lot of reporters for a lot of publications do.
Yeah, that's kind of what The Athletic is all about. There's a lot of popular writers that write for that publication. It's excellent content for a sports fanatic. It's worth paying for because the writers are so talented and highly connected and everything. But they brought their audiences with them when they went there, and that's how that model can succeed. So very interesting. My top story is this just broke. So Reuters is reporting, the reporters are Echo Wang and Alexandra Alper, that ByteDance, the company that owns TikTok, the Chinese-controlled company that owns TikTok, has agreed to divest the U.S. operations of TikTok completely in order to avoid getting banned by the Trump administration. Under the proposed deal, ByteDance would exit completely, and Microsoft would take over TikTok in the United States, but just the data. So the deal is that Microsoft would be in charge of protecting all of TikTok's user data. And then the plan also allows for a different U.S. company other than Microsoft to take over the operations of TikTok as the app. So it's in best story because, I mean, I'm of two opinions on TikTok, as we've discussed in the past.
Me too.
You know, it's a surveillance, it's a Chinese surveillance tool. So there's that. So in that sense, this is a good move. On the other hand, it's at the behest of the Trump administration pressuring to ban it. So I have to suspect something there. I don't trust the Trump administration.
I also suspect that Sarah Cooper is involved in that. But however, as has been pointed out roundly, that just leaves Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and a whole bunch of other platforms for social media. So I'm not too worried about the content going away. But Sarah Cooper posted earlier today that Trump is pissing off a lot of suburban moms, and there was a TikTok video of this generously sized suburban mom dancing to, to a very funny song. I'll put it in the show notes.
Nike has an amazing new ad out.
It's fabulous.
Yeah, this is from, I found this on CNN, and their caption encapsulates the Nike's latest ad, sends a powerful message about COVID-19 and Black Lives Matter movement at a time when professional sports is struggling to start up amidst the pandemic. The ad had quickly become popular online. I think 23 million on YouTube was the last count I saw. And it is amazing. It is titled "You Can't Stop Us," and it's a split screen editing. So on one side is an image, and the other side is another image. So half of the screen is taken up with one image, the other half is another, and it's just footage of sports. And so on one side, it's hard to explain without watching it. On one side, there's a discus thrower, and as it goes over to the other side, it turns into a ballerina on stage. There's another where a baseball player snaps his bat across his knees, and simultaneously on the other side, there's a golfer who does the same with his club. And the editing is simply insanely good for anybody who, yeah. So it is apparently 4,000 hours of sports footage that they need to go through to align these. But we'll embed it in the show notes. It's just amazing. So there's
it's a few minutes long.
It is. There's
not a 30-second spot. It's like a little documentary.
Yeah, there's a description with the YouTube ad that said, "You can't stop Megan Rapinoe, soccer player, Serena Williams," everybody knows who Serena Williams is, "LeBron James, just as you can't stop Naomi Osaka, who's a tennis player, Cristiano Ronaldo, who's a soccer player, and Leo Baker." I had to look some of these up, as a skateboarder. That one definitely. Because as athletes, we're never alone. Sports unites us, strengthens us, keeps us pushing ahead. No matter what, we will always come back stronger together. You can't stop sport because you can't stop us. And, it's almost like the editing got in the way of the message, because I was so amazed with the editing that I didn't really pay attention to the narrator or what they're actually saying. But yeah, we'll put it in the show notes for everybody to see.
I agree with you. It's better to watch it with the sound off, I think. Well, yeah, it's a phenomenal thing. I'm out of good news. I do have some smiles, but you tell me when I can do those.
You know what? I was going to say, let's wait till I've got a couple of more good stories, but let's wait for the smiles until after bad, because then we'll need the smiles, right? I'm kind of thinking balancing it out and everything. Yeah. So my other good one is the Littlest Bailout Relief Fund. This is from Trend Hunters, Daniel Johnson. So Country Time, the lemonade brand, has launched a new campaign called the Littlest Bailout Relief Fund. And what they're going to do is distribute stimulus checks to children who aren't able to operate their lemonade stands due to the pandemic. There's a short video that the company said there's a child operating a lemonade stand with no customers. A tumbleweed goes by
How brilliant.
The smallest of small businesses are about to get some help, and you can participate at the Edge. You can register them for getting $100 bailout check, and the bailout checks look like Treasury checks. They're designed exactly like Treasury checks. And the claims will be chosen at random. You'll get a commemorative, if you're chosen, you'll get a commemorative check and a prepaid gift card. And you can do that at countrytimebailout.com.
I love that story.
Isn't it? It's great.
It's adorable.
So another one, this is, we talked about this a couple of years ago. Virtual influencers. So brands are creating their own influencers so that they don't have to deal with real life influencers and can control their message. This is from entrepreneurs Tori Tayanaka. So this is written like the trend has just started, but it hasn't. It's been, as we said, we talked about it in 2018, but computer-generated, computer-created fictional characters that brands are using as influencers. They're often paired with animated images. They're photorealistic personas that are created. So some companies are building them from the ground up so they can control every aspect of them. But one of the ones that we talked about 2 years ago was Lil Miquela. In episode 229. And back then, she, quote unquote, was just a fashion beauty influencer. But now let's get an update from Lil Miquela. It was created by an LA-based firm called Brood. And now, here's a quote from the article. Now she's a regular face in fashion magazines, fronts a wide range of luxury brands. More than 80,000 people stream Lil Miquela songs on Spotify every month. She has given interviews from Coachella and shown off tattoo designed by an artist who inked Miley Cyrus. Until her creators revealed her true provenance, many of her fans were convinced she was a flesh and blood teenager. There's others. There's a Blocko, who is another Brood creation, who's sporting a streetwear style and tattoos. He describes himself as young robot sex symbol. There's a KNC's virtual kernel. There's Shudu Graham, which is another one we talked about 2 years ago. But we also wondered in episode 306 if the plague would pop the influencer button and bubble, and I'm starting to think that maybe this is the answer: virtual influencers rather than real life ones.
Wait, what? They have followings?
Yeah, they have tons of followings.
That's hilarious.
Yes.
And people know that they're not real?
Well, now they do. I think some of them started out by not knowing that they were real. But in Marshall, Minnesota, Walmart in Marshall, Minnesota, there was a couple who decided to protest the Governor Walz's dictatorial, quote unquote, statewide mask mandate. And so they did that by wearing red face coverings or scarves or whatever that had the Nazi swastika on them. So they basically small Nazi flags they put around their faces to protest it, and they were called out by customers. There's video of these customers saying that's not good. You need to take those off. You need to leave. You need to So they were called out by that, and they were belligerent, and they were holding up their they were giving the Nazi salute and everything, and saying that if we don't stand up to Governor Walz, we're going to live in a dictatorship, just like Nazi Germany and everything. And I'm like, these people, are they ignorant or are they actual fascists? I think part of the problem that we're dealing with right now is we are so far removed from World War II. It's not fresh in our collective memory anymore. Yes. So we don't really understand the context. I think in this case, I'm thinking that they're just completely ignorant of history and they're latching on to what they are being told is dictatorial behavior. So it's just strange. Walmart put out a restraining order on them, so they're not allowed back in the store. But it's just it's a weird world.
Just yesterday in New York, an employee politely asked a woman to put a mask on, and the woman knocked this 76 something-year-old woman down and broke her hip. I mean, there's insanity going on. There's sheer insanity, and you're right about being so far from World War II, which is why I had the Holocaust survivors speaking out in the best part of the show, because there are so few of them left.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is taught in school. I really don't.
It's not. No, so that is, as I said earlier, that it's education. And I was in my high school, actually, there was one teacher who did a Holocaust, World War II Holocaust class that everybody raved about. I never actually got to take him for whatever reason, but civics is not taught in class. I mean, we're not taught how our own government works. And people are completely ignorant of history. I run across it again and again. And ignoring history, you're doomed to repeat it, right?
There was a young man who worked for me probably 20 years ago, and I had my PR firm, maybe 25. And we were walking along one day. I just left the meeting, and he said, "Can you just tell me, what was the big deal about JFK?"
Wow.
He didn't know. He hadn't been taught. It's, I mean, if you study history, you better do it after school or outside of school. Yeah. Anyhow, back to real life, say goodbye to in real life trade shows until probably 2022. This is from a VentureBeat story by David Takahashi, and the Chaotic Consumer Electronics Show is usually attended by about 180,000 people. It's going virtual, and this is going to be an enormous blow to tech marketing companies and startups who rely on CES to showcase their upcoming products. And it draws press, it draws tech enthusiasts, but probably most importantly, buyers. So in case you thought, in-person events are coming back, you're going to see this story over and over. And they made the decision, consulting with more than 10,000 attendees and other stakeholders in recent weeks, and finding that large numbers of people simply didn't want to attend the show. So the consumer CTA, I don't know what this stands for, the CEO, Gary Shapiro, said he talked to scores of CEOs and everybody understood the challenges of the pandemic. And they said the only way they can protect attendees during the pandemic is to have it online. And oh goodness, where's his name? Anyway, Shapiro, I don't have his first name, whose wife is a doctor, said the CTA didn't want to be responsible for spreading the pandemic, even though it had thousands of exhibitors already signed up and a likely crowd of tens of thousands of people all ready to come. And you just can't do it.
I mean, there's the virus, and then there's the people, and I think people are getting smarter and smarter about being realistic about the risk associated with being in public with a lot of people. And Michael Osterholm, the epidemiologist at the University of Minnesota, one of the leading epidemiologists in the country, I read an interview with him. He doesn't think there's going to be a second wave. He thinks this is different, that it's going to be with us for a long time. Longer than a couple of years, like a decade or indefinitely. And even if we get a vaccine, it's not going to be an on-off switch. It might be something that we need to continue to get inoculated. So,
well, that's a little bit like the flu, but my doctor always says when a new vaccine comes out, let's wait a year and see what happens, because some people will undoubtedly have very serious side effects. Oh. And, the one that they're talking about now, that they just are, betting on 500 million doses. Apparently, it only lasts a short time, and you're going to have a second vaccination. So, and I get a flu shot every year, but I generally also do get the flu, theoretically less seriously. Who knows? But I've had pneumonia 7 times. So
wow.
Yeah, I mean, that's not.
I've been thinking about this for a while, and you've heard of the Harper's letter?
No, I have not.
Okay, so there's an open letter on Harper's magazine from a bunch of intellectual thought leaders. Not thought leaders is a bad name for it. Our public intellectuals in America. That was written about cancel culture. And so I'm just going to read the first little bit of it here. starts out with powerful protests for racial and social justice are leading to overdue demands for police reform, along with wider calls of greater equality and inclusion across our society, not least in higher education, journalism, philanthropy, and the arts. But this needed reckoning has also intensified a new set of moral attitudes and political commitments that tend to weaken our norms of open debate and toleration of differences in favor of ideological conformity. As we applaud the first development, we also raise our voices against the second. The forces of illiberalism are gaining strength throughout the world and have a powerful ally in Donald Trump, who represents a real threat to democracy. But resistance must not be allowed to harden into its own brand of dogma or coercion, which right-wing demagogues are already exploiting. The democratic inclusion we want can be achieved only if we speak out against the intolerant climate that has set in on all sides. The way to persuasion, not by trying to silence or wish them away. We refuse any false choice between justice and freedom, which cannot exist without each other. As writers, we need a culture that leaves us room for experimentation, risk-taking, even mistakes. We need to preserve the possibility of good faith disagreement without dire professional consequences. If we don't defend the very thing for which our work depends, we shouldn't expect the public or state to defend it for us. And I think, there's a lot to complain about. There's a lot of things that we should be outraged about and we must speak out about. But also, I see there's a lot of virtue signaling. There's a lot of people picking up on something without doing the investigation and really destroying people's lives. I mean, their livelihoods, people getting canceled because of something. We need to have room for redemption, forgiveness. I've been saying, like, since social media, that we need to, as a society, become much more forgiving. I thought it would happen, but I don't think it is.
I don't think it will either. I think it's all gone. I think perhaps when Biden is president and there's a moral leadership, that maybe some of this will even out. But there's such rifts between people now, and you're so right about just, everybody jumping on somebody and this mob that runs so much of social media. And people, we've talked about this all the time. People are responsible for vetting their sources. And before you post something, you got to find out if it's real. And, so many times it looks real and it's not. I mean, I have to credit Twitter with the little notation they have when it's a reliable source. It's a green check. There's an exclamation and a red box when they feel that it's not a source that has journalistic quality. And, at least they're doing something. Whether or not people have noticed that or know what it means or care, I don't know, but I care.
Yeah. I've seen situations where it's not even the source, media source, or whether it's somebody who knows somebody who said something and they picked up on it. And, well, my friend who I trust says this person is horrible, so I'm going to repeat that because I trust my friend, and the friend was wrong. And they didn't take the time to find out what the true source of the issue was.
Well, but here you have a president who says many people say, so that becomes the norm. I mean, we do not have moral leadership. And perhaps when we how to check your devices for stalkerware by Wired. It's got detailed instructions for iOS and Android devices, and you really need to look at this link and make sure that you do not have stalkerware on your devices. It's pretty pervasive stuff. You got one?
Yeah, I do. This is a trend discovery tool called Exploding Topics. And it basically surfaces trends. Just a website, you go to it and see what's trending. It's based on search data, but tracks trends anywhere from 1 month to 15 years. So you can choose the time frame in which the data is included, and it displays a graph, monthly search average, percentage of growth The one that I found is psychological safety, and that is the ability to express oneself without fear of repercussions. Based on what we were just talking about, this allows people to take risks, challenge assumptions, make mistakes, and learn. According to a 2-year study by Google, the highest performing teams have a high degree of psychological safety. Same thing applies with online debates. But then it also has related topics, which are psychological trauma, time, famine, and gaslighting. Time famine is the stress that occurs when you have too many things to do and not enough time to do them. But it's a cool tool for finding stuff you didn't know was trending, and it has some nice graphics and data to accompany it as well.
Oh, I love that idea. Yeah. That's great. This one is called My Front Page, and it's created by an 18-year-old who's called Ann, and it lets you create your own personal new tab page. So on mine, my homepage is Google, and with this in your browser, without any code at all and for free, you can add elements, you can change the order of stuff, you can modify the colors, you can add custom CSS. If you know some code, you can create your own themes to have your new tab open the way you like it. And you don't need to know any code. You don't have to sign up. You don't have to give them a credit card. If you know a little bit of CSS, you can add your own, and you can make themes and for yourself and for other My Front Page users. It's very cool. Even I can do it.
So is it a browser extension?
No, it's a website where you create the page.
And then it ties to your browser. So when you open up a new tab, it's the new.
Yes.
Huh, I wonder how that works. And
I don't know. So your next one's great, Dave.
Yeah, this is a cool new feature. I found it from James Potter, who's at Business 2 Community, and LinkedIn has a new feature that allows. So I have a friend whose name is Blois, and nobody can pronounce his name properly the first time. And I've known people who have known Blois for many, many years and still can't pronounce his name for whatever reason.
How do you spell it?
It's Blois.
Oh, I'd never get that.
Yeah, so he has that problem. I don't. My name is David Erickson. Most people can can figure that out. But this is a feature that Blois should take advantage of, and it's a new feature on LinkedIn where you can actually record how you pronounce your name. And have that on your LinkedIn profile so people can actually hear how to pronounce your name. So if they're meeting you first time in a business meeting, it removes that awkwardness of people who have difficult to pronounce names for the person who's going to meet you. And it's basically a little icon next to your name on your LinkedIn profile that you can access it through the app. It's not available on desktop now or yet, maybe in the future, but right now. And you just click on the pencil icon next to your name, and then it'll take you to a screen where you can add audio of how to pronounce your name. You hold down the microphone icon and record your name, and then it lives on your profile. It's only available on iOS and Android mobile app. And you have a maximum of 10 seconds recording time. But I did a screen recording of how to do it. It's pretty simple. We'll put that in the show notes as well.
So you mean people can stop calling me Ms. Oakman?
Well, I was thinking about you, and I wouldn't have imagined that people would have that difficulty pronouncing your name.
Constant.
But the people do.
Oakman.
Yeah. But people do not, I mean, you've gotten emails where you're addressed as a man, right?
Totally.
Because BL. So if you put your recording, they would recognize your voice as a female.
My picture's there.
Yeah, that's
Hello.
right. Yeah, exactly. Yep. All right. So let's wrap this up.
Okay.
This is fascinating stuff from Axios. David Nather is the reporter on this story. They have done a poll with Ipsos, and one of the questions was, have you formed a social bubble, quote unquote, of people you interact with that take similar precautions to minimize the risk of catching COVID-19? And so they asked this of 1,000 plus Americans, and the breakdown is 47% said yes, 53% said no. More women than men are more likely to have agreed with that, to have said that they formed a social bubble, 51% versus 42. You're more suburban, 50%. More older people, logically, 65 plus is 54%. And the higher education, more likely you're to have formed a social bubble. But we talked about in the psychology of consumers around COVID many episodes ago. This is another aspect of that people are adjusting to this new reality, and finding people that they trust for their kids' play dates, for socializing, and all that kind of stuff. So
that's really an interesting study.
Yeah, so, and it's nonpartisan too. The results were the same across the board in terms of politics. So